assassinated. You're talking about my succession plan. A couple days later, I get assassinated. You're lying about little things about me. Everything Turning Point is doing.
Candace Owens says she's done playing nice, and the movement she helped build might never recover. Candace Owens has never been afraid to light a match. But this time, she didn't just spark controversy. She detonated a political grenade inside her own camp. On her latest podcast, the conservative firebrand looked straight into the camera and said, without a tremor in her voice, "I want war with all of you. No metaphors, no filters, just open rebellion against the very network that once made her a household name, Turning Point USA." Within minutes, the clip went viral. Fans clipped it, slowed it down, replayed her tone like it was evidence in a courtroom. Some said it was grief talking. Others said it was ego. But everyone agreed on one thing. Something inside the MAGA machine had cracked. This wasn't the usual influencer drama. Owens wasn't beefing with an online troll. She was calling out the organization she once helped shape, the one built around her late friend Charlie Kirk. And if you think this is just another political feud, think again. What's unraveling here could expose fractures far deeper than any of her past controversies. Because behind the anger, behind the war speech, there's something else. Pain, betrayal, and a creeping suspicion that the empire Charlie Kirk built might not be what it seems anymore. And that's where this story begins. A few days before that explosive declaration, the air around Candace Owens was already heavy with suspicion. Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA, her former ally, her friend, had been shot during a live event in front of thousands. The footage froze the internet. Chaos in the crowd, muffled screams, disbelief. For most, it was a national tragedy. But for Candace, it felt like something far worse, a betrayal. In the hours following the shooting, reports began to flood in. A suspect was caught. A motive was announced. The story wrapped up neatly, too neatly. And somewhere between the official press conferences and the political statements, Candace's instincts started screaming that something didn't add up. She began piecing together her own narrative, a web of uneasy coincidences that pointed, in her mind, toward the people closest to Charlie. Turning Point, the organization he had built, suddenly looked like a fortress of silence, and the more she reached out for answers, the colder it got. But when she finally spoke publicly, it wasn't the quiet, rational Candace people remembered. It was a woman unraveling decades of loyalty in real time. She told her audience that she felt betrayed, not by her enemies, but by the very people she once considered family. And then came the line that would shake conservative media to its core. Everything Turning Point is doing is wrong. You know it's wrong. Deep down you know it. It wasn't a political disagreement. It was an accusation, one that carried a mix of grief and fury. Her followers leaned in, unsure if this was the start of a confession or a declaration. But as she spoke, it became clear. She wasn't speculating. She was certain. For Candace, this wasn't just about Charlie's death. It was about the system that moved on too fast, the friends who stayed quiet, and the organization that, in her eyes, abandoned the truth for reputation. And the more she spoke, the more that certainty hardened into something unshakable. The war wasn't spontaneous. It had been brewing for years. Candace had seen controversy before, plenty of it. She'd survived social media storms, newsroom feuds, and entire headlines written just to call her reckless. But this felt different. In her latest monologue, she didn't just challenge Turning Point USA. She dismantled its credibility piece by piece. She said the organization Charlie once led with conviction had lost its soul the moment he died. That somewhere between the tributes and the press releases, something cold had crept in. To outsiders, it looked like she was spiraling, another pundit letting emotion cloud judgment. But to those who had followed her long enough, there was something raw and disturbingly honest in her tone. It wasn't the clickbait Candace. It was the woman who had once stood beside Charlie Kirk on stage, defending a cause she believed in.
So we were again talking about Kanye. Charlie wrote to me, "You're going to be the Iron Lady of America." He had such a political vision for me. I never wanted that sort of a thing. I see it so freaking...
When she started reading their old messages on camera, private conversations from years earlier, the internet froze. These weren't just texts. They were fragments of friendship, the kind that blurred the line between politics and faith. Charlie, as she shared, had once told her he feared he wouldn't live to see the end of the revolution he started. He joked about it, but it lingered like prophecy. "I might be Moses," he'd said. "I might not see this whole thing through." For Candace, those words had become impossible to ignore. She believed he had seen it coming, that the same forces now surrounding Turning Point had already been pressing down on him long before that night. But the public didn't hear a prophecy. They heard paranoia. And while the right scrambled to control the narrative, Candace doubled down. She said it plainly. Turning Point betrayed Charlie Kirk, that the people now claiming to honor his legacy were, in her eyes, profiting from his death. Even her critics had to admit, it was gutsy. She was risking her entire reputation to call out the machine that once made her famous. But behind every bold word, there was something else. A note of heartbreak that even her toughest supporters couldn't miss. IT wasn't just outrage. It was mourning, because deep down, it wasn't just about Charlie's death. IT was about losing the only political home she ever had. And once that home was gone, there was no reason left to stay silent. When Candace Owens said she had receipts, she wasn't bluffing. She brought screenshots, texts, timelines, pieces of a puzzle that painted a story she said nobody else had the courage to tell. It started with a message from years ago. Candace showed the exchange on screen, her voice breaking slightly as she read it. Charlie had texted her about his fears, not of the left, not of protesters, but of his own orbit. He said he felt surrounded by people who valued access and money over mission, that the pressure from donors was crushing, that he had to toe the line or lose the funding. Candace paused after reading that part. She didn't have to explain what she thought it meant. Then came the clip she said haunted her. Charlie's former chief of staff, Mikey McCoy, live streaming moments after the shooting. Candace said he went live before Charlie had even been pronounced dead. She didn't accuse him directly, but she called it weird. Weird that he was broadcasting instead of helping. Weird that he walked off camera with his phone pressed to his ear. Weird that nobody seemed to question it. And while Turning Point USA quickly came forward with an explanation that McCoy had been sending footage to Arizona headquarters for social media updates, Candace didn't buy it. She said the story was too polished, too rehearsed, like something written after the fact. To her, it wasn't just one inconsistency. It was dozens, the quiet replacements, the new leadership, the speed at which Turning Point moved on. She pointed out that the new CEO, Erica Kirk, Charlie's widow, had been named within weeks. The events resumed. The podcasts continued. The fundraising exploded, in Candace's eyes. It all looked choreographed, like someone had been waiting for this exact moment. But her biggest revelation wasn't about logistics. It was about memory. She reminded her audience of the statement issued back in 2019 when Turning Point's own college chapters demanded her resignation. They accused her of dividing the organization, of turning personal views into public problems. Now, years later, she read their words back to them, almost whispering. Turning Point USA is above thoughtless and divisive rhetoric. And then she looked up from the paper and said, "You think you're above me? You think you're above truth." The comments exploded. Some called it vengeance. Others called it bravery. But what nobody could deny was the emotion in her eyes, the mix of betrayal, sadness, and fury that only comes when someone's been holding in the truth for too long. Candace wasn't just fighting a political battle anymore. She was fighting ghosts of Charlie, of loyalty, of who she used to be. And for her, the only way forward was through fire. By the time Candace Owens went live again, the world already knew what was coming. Her tone had changed. Gone was the hesitation, the careful phrasing. This time, she didn't come to explain. She came to fight. The camera rolled. The lighting was harsh, unfiltered. And with one deep breath, she said it again. "I want war with all of you. All of you." The clip hit social media like a shockwave. It wasn't just anger. It was defiance, almost ritualistic. Every word carried the sting of someone who had loved too hard and been cut too deep. She wasn't ranting about the left or taking aim at political opponents. She was declaring war on her own side. The conservative establishment, the donors, the influencers, the media gatekeepers. The ones she said turned their backs on Charlie Kirk and on her. Her followers didn't know what to do with it. Some called her courageous, the only one brave enough to speak truth to power. Others said she'd lost it. That grief had finally broken her, but no matter which side they fell on, everyone was watching. As her words echoed across the internet, Turning Point USA scrambled to do damage control. Their spokespeople insisted that Candace was spreading unverified claims, that her anger was misdirected, that she was grieving in public. But the damage was already done. Because in that moment, Candace Owens had crossed the line between insider and outsider, between being part of the movement and becoming its loudest critic. And it wasn't the first time she'd burned a bridge. After leaving the Daily Wire over her stance on Israel, she'd made it clear she didn't answer to anyone. Not Ben Shapiro, not corporate donors, not the conservative machine. She was her own entity now, Candace Owens, LLC. But this wasn't business strategy. This was personal. She said she'd watched people who once called Charlie brother rush to rebrand his legacy, to fill his shoes before the dirt had even settled on his grave. She said it wasn't just distasteful, it was spiritual betrayal. And the way she told it, her mission now wasn't to rebuild. IT was to expose. Her war wasn't about politics anymore. IT was about redemption. The kind that can only come when every secret finally sees daylight. And she promised she wasn't done yet. The conservative world thrives on unity, or at least the illusion of it. But the moment Candace Owens declared war on Turning Point USA, that illusion shattered. In the hours that followed her podcast, social media fractured like glass. Hashtags trended. Influencers picked sides. Commentators who once praised Candace now treated her like a liability. IT was the digital version of a civil war. Quiet at first, but spreading fast. For years, Candace had been the movement's sharp-tongued prodigy, the face of a new generation of conservatives who could spar with the media, charm donors, and dominate any debate. But now, she was standing alone, and backing. No network, just conviction and a camera. And what made the divide even more painful was how personal it all felt. This wasn't a disagreement about policy or politics. IT was a fight over legacy. Charlie Kirk's legacy, and who had the right to carry it forward. Turning Point USA tried to push past the noise. They hosted new events, announced fresh speakers, and leaned into the narrative of continuing Charlie's mission. But online, the optics were brutal. Every announcement felt like salt on an open wound. People started asking the same question Candace had whispered aloud. Did they move on too quickly? For Candace's supporters, the timing spoke volumes. They saw the glossy press releases, the memorial speeches, the photo ops, and they didn't see grief. They saw branding. Meanwhile, mainstream outlets couldn't resist the story. Headlines turned it into a saga. Candace Owens versus Turning Point. The right eats its own. And somewhere between the interviews and the reaction videos, the movement's fractures became impossible to hide. Even people who once idolized Charlie began to quietly question what Turning Point had become: a political hub, a donor machine, or a grieving empire trying to repackage itself as unshakable. Candace had forced everyone to look, and the more people looked, the harder it became to unsee what was there, a movement built on unity, now feeding on tension. The irony, Candace's war might have done exactly what she said she wanted: expose the truth. But it also left her on an island, exiled by the very empire she helped build. And the storm was far from over. Somewhere beneath the defiance, the live streams, and the political noise, there's something that even Candace's harshest critics can't ignore. She's grieving. Not just for Charlie Kirk, but for what his death took from her. In one of her quieter moments, she admitted that she thought speaking out would bring everyone together again, that the old crew from Turning Point might reunite, that they'd grieve, talk, maybe even heal. Instead, the opposite happened. Doors closed. Phones stopped ringing. The friends she once considered family went silent. Candace said she wanted truth, but what she found was distance. a wall between herself and the only community that ever truly accepted her. You can hear it in her pauses. The way her voice catches before she says Charlie's name. It's not the voice of a political warrior. It's the voice of someone who still can't believe how fast everything changed. To understand her rage, you have to understand her loyalty. Candace didn't just work for Turning Point. She believed in it. She built her career under its banner. She defended it when critics called it radical. She fought for its message when the media dismissed it as propaganda. And now, she feels like it's turned on her. That's what makes this story sting so deeply. It's not just the loss of a friend. It's the loss of belonging. Because no matter how powerful her voice gets, no matter how many followers she amasses, you can sense the loneliness behind every word. And maybe that's why this war doesn't feel like politics, that IT feels like heartbreak. When Candace looks into the camera, she isn't just addressing the public. She's talking to ghosts. T.O. Charlie, T.O. the movement they built together, T.O. the version of herself that still believed they were all fighting for the same thing. That's the tragedy of it all. She didn't just lose an ally. She lost the idea that loyalty and truth could coexist. And once that illusion breaks, there's no going back. Today, the dust hasn't settled, not even close. Candace Owens' declaration of war continues to ripple through every corner of the conservative world. Turning Point USA is still pushing forward, expanding its reach, reshaping its image. And Candace? She's still talking, still dissecting, still demanding answers that nobody seems willing to give. But something about the tone has changed. She's calmer now, measured. Like someone who's accepted that the fight she started isn't one she can end. Her critics say she's chasing ghosts. Her supporters say she's chasing justice. And in a way, both might be true. Because behind the headlines and hashtags, there's a woman standing alone, holding onto the last thread of a friendship that defined her career and, in some ways, her identity. Every time she talks about Charlie Kirk, there's a tremor in her voice, a mix of reverence and regret. You can tell she still misses him. You can tell she still wants to believe that his mission meant something. Meanwhile, Turning Point USA has moved on. New leadership, new direction, new funding. The machine never stops that IT can't afford to. And maybe that's what Candace was railing against all along. The machine, the endless cycle of power, image, and money that swallows grief and spits out press releases. Whether she's right or wrong almost doesn't matter anymore, because in speaking out, she's forced a conversation that nobody else had the courage to start. Was Charlie Kirk betrayed? Was Candace? Or is this just what happens when politics devours everything? Even friendship, even faith, even truth? Candace Owens may not have the answers, but she's made one thing painfully clear. If there's a line between loyalty and silence, she's already crossed it. And somewhere out there, in the echo chamber of outrage and mourning, her words still linger, sharp, defiant, unflinching. I want war with all of you, not because she hates them, but because she refuses to forget.